All right, hello and welcome to Startup Business Q&A week 125. Thanks so much for joining us. And this week we're doing an AMA, and Ask Me Anything. Those of you who are tuning in for the questions, good stuff. Although some of you will be tuning in because, of course, we also have some announcements for winners this week because there's been a couple of incentives I've run on Facebook, in fact, on the Entrepreneur Business Group. So we're going to get into that as well. I'm just going to post here quickly on Instagram. So hello to everyone on the podcast. Hello, everyone, of course, listening on Instagram, on Facebook, and on YouTube as well. Give us a wave. If you are listening right now live, please give us hashtag Team Live. And if you're listening as a replay, then it's hashtag Team Replay. So I can see who was listening and live and who, of course, was listening retrospectively, because I know some of you are tucked in bed right now. That's the thing. Just sharing as well to make sure that some people are paying attention and watching this, because I know a lot of you this is relevant to. So also we're going to get into two announcements. Firstly, one related to the Entrepreneur Business Club, and the other one related to a question I asked in the Entrepreneur Business Group in Facebook. So hopefully there will be enough of you jumping on listening to that. I'll just let a few of you come onto the stream. Let us know when you're listening in from, and hopefully we can get started. So there we go. All my admin's done and all my chat in the background whilst I'm doing it. Hi, everyone joining on Instagram. James Awesome87. Hello to you. Devon, hello. Bina, hello as well. Zeb, Ian, Daniel, all here on Facebook as well. So firstly, let's get into the first announcement. In fact, I want to make. It was on my doorstep this morning. Was this? So I bought this. It was actually on Kindle. I checked it. It was about 4 years ago when this came out. Greg Keown's book is fantastic on essentialism. I don't know who sent it to me, but it just arrived on my doorstep, an Amazon parcel with my name on it, and someone has kindly bought me this. So whoever did. I get gifts every so often, so I might shout out every time it happens. But whoever sent me this, thank you so much. I have a guess who it might be. But if it is you, do own up, because I'd like to send you out, shout you out and say thank you. This is an amazing book, so I would really check it out if you haven't read it already. And you can pretty much guess that the book is about stripping back and focusing on the things that matter. So whoever sent me this, thank you very much. It's always lovely getting gifts from people, and I received that in the post this morning. So it's very kind of you. If you're watching live right now, please write in hashtag Team Live, and if you're watching later, put in Team Replay so we can see who checked it out a bit retrospectively. And let's get into the first of the announcements, which is the winner of the best answer. I put a question out, I think it was several days ago, on the Entrepreneur Business Group in Facebook, and every so often for fun I throw out a question asked, with like $50 to whoever gets the best answer. And the question was, with 4 weeks to the end of the year, so it's obviously at the start of the month, how will you use them? And our best answer, I went through them all. There was like dozens of them put in there. It's often is the case when you add money to it. And one thing I will add is that someone asked the question. I think he wrote something like, I think the more important question is, why do you have to add why do you add $50 to get people to answer a question? Well, the answer, I'm not going to beat about the bush. The answer is you get more engagement from those who otherwise wouldn't bother engaging by putting money in, if that's something that works and you do it. It's the same reason why you put money on ads, for instance. If you want to generate engagement and people engaging in your content, then sometimes you throw money at it. It's not difficult. Just quickly on Instagram, James has asked, who's the author of the book? Here you can take a screen grab. Possibly can't see it because it might be inverted. Greg McKeown, McKeown. Whoever got me that, thank you very much. But it's a good book. And so my answer to that question was really simple. It was I offered $50 because I wanted to get a load of answers. As simple as that. It gets people moving when you get dangled money, I'm afraid. So that's no problem. It's happy to do it. And the winner, I feel, is this one. This is Matt Baisley. So congratulations. Send me a DM with your email address. Don't post it in the comments here. And you wrote, I'm building a new business. I got tired of offering my services to companies that treated their customers poorly. My industry is swarming with poor service. So I've pivoted my business, changed the business name for a more marketable brand to the public. And in the new year, I'll be offering a superior service. And so there are other things he wrote as well. But the reason why I picked that one is because a lot of people moan. And what he's done is say, do you know what? I've had enough of that. I'm going to go do it the way I think it should be done. And, good luck to you, Matt. So the prize of $50, not much, but hopefully that helps you buy yourself some help as you're building the business. And DM me or email, I'll send you it by PayPal. So hello, everyone, and welcome to Start a Business Q&A, episode 125. It's an AMA today. So any question you have, do just post them in the comments here, and I will share them and try my best to answer them. Just posting on YouTube, just done there as well. Now, the first question is from Lung. She said, what's the best invoicing and accounting software for startups or freelancers? Is there a good system for a low-cost accounting method? It's interesting, this, because overwhelmingly the people I work with and I know who are involved in startups, they use QuickBooks. I'm not going to say it's the best, because I think the best is the one you get on with the most. For a very much the startup, someone who's literally just beginning, you can't go far wrong with things like Google Drive, because anywhere you want, you can access your document. And what I did when I first started was I called up my accountant and said, how do you want this information to be processed? And they said, at the end of the year, we take all of your accounting and we put it into our spreadsheet. So we have it in a format that matches ours. So what I said was, well, why don't you send me the template of that spreadsheet and I will just use that? And that cuts out a whole step. They loved it. So we still do that now. Our accounts go straight onto that spreadsheet because that's what they're going to be using anyway. And so they basically have all the information they need. But anything deeper, more detailed, or with more substance than that, it's just an accountant. So as much as is possible, have someone who can, look after that kind of thing for you, I'd say. But when you're just starting out, Google Drive is absolutely fine. Sending invoices as well. It's like once you've got the template set up and it has them for you, it's very simple then to, what's wrong with my microphone? It's very simple then to simply, edit the invoice date and you stick it out again. So it seems to work no problem for me. If you're just joining in, I'd like to write hashtag team live if you're watching right now, or hashtag team replay if you're watching at the replay of this. And also let us know where you're listening from, because we've got some people all over the world I can see joining in on Instagram, and I think over in Facebook as well. So that's my answer to your question, Lung, and I think using their sheet from your accountant sheet is a really nice way of doing that. Next question is from Ben Bradbury. Shout out to Ben, who I saw last week, and we created some great content. Really enjoyed that. Out on a freezing cold balcony in Shoreditch. So check out my LinkedIn profile if you want to watch that. As a 2-part series we did on LinkedIn tips last week. I'll also be sharing that in my newsletter later today as it comes out. And you can register for that on therichardmoore.com. And Ben's asked, what software and tools can you not live without? Software and tools. Okay, so there are loads, but I think 2 things. Firstly, because I create video content, other than live, we're not there yet, but you can add captions afterwards. But other than live, all my video content has captions, and that's done by a company called Subtitle, so subtitle but with a Z at the front. So I have a partnership with them, and the reason why that is essential is because without any captions, 80% of your videos won't really be watched, especially because there's dialogue. My videos aren't visual in the sense that they're, a drone panning over beautiful wildlife. It's me talking. And if 80% of video that is consumed online isn't consumed with the sound on, which is pretty much a fact, then you need to make sure your captions are there. So that is absolutely essential because I create content. It's just pointless to make content that doesn't have captions when you produce it, unless there's some very specific set of reasons for that. For instance, if it is a singer, they don't need to add captions because people are probably going to consume that for the singing, right? So that's the way I'd look at it. The other thing, I could go on all night, but the other tool I would say, if I'm going to use a tool, is voice messages on direct messenger. So on Facebook, on Instagram, on LinkedIn as well, you can do voice. And I think voice is really important because it's so easy. It's actually easier than typing. There's so many times when I'm about to type a direct message and I'll just go, you know what? I'll just press microphone and say it instead. But the reaction is phenomenal. You get so much in return because people aren't used to that. They're used to just text, and because people are maybe nervous about sharing voice and things like that. So it's an amazing tool. It really does give the personal touch, and for someone to bother to send out a voice message to someone, the irony is it's easier because you just speak. But most people don't want to get it wrong, and you only got one take kind of thing to speak, and people really, really appreciate that. So that really makes a difference. Hello, I wish I know how to say your name, Ozchick. I think I said it right. Love you, Richard. Thank you very much on Instagram. Angelina, Angie9983, hello, good to see you as well. And Sedge Jill, good to see you too. Michael Getty has asked on Facebook, let me just zoom it back because otherwise I'll never get to it. What is the best system for keeping records for tax purposes? Any templates? I would say, why don't you speak to your accountant, because the best place to go is the templates that they use. And if you're going to learn one anyway, like I said with my accounting spreadsheets when I first started, use the spreadsheet that they use, because then you're singing this, using the same language. That would make sense. But QuickBooks, like I say, is the kind of the best for accounting. But really, for tax purposes, I have an accountant that is employed to do it. So it sounds weird, right? But one of the best investments ever, apart from a cleaner, because it means so few arguments between my wife and I, because we have a cleaner instead. But apart from that, one of the best investments ever is an accountant. There are so many things that unless you are into tax or understand tax or sell it as a service, you really aren't going to navigate. Plus the time anyway, I just think it makes sense to use an accountant. If you ask them for a template, if you're not doing it that way, that makes sense. But I'm not the best person to ask when it comes to a template for tax purposes, especially because I'm in the UK. Might be different for you. I would say it'd be interesting to look at some forums, or maybe on Quora, for instance, and ask that kind of question. It'd be interesting to see what people's reactions are. And if anyone has, in the States who's watching this, anyone who has a best system for themselves for keeping records for tax purposes, please post so Michael can see the answer there. That's probably the most professional and safe answer I should give there, okay? Because it's obviously going to be slightly different in the States. Next question is from Bernadette Judd. Nice to see you, Bernadette. Hello. And she's asked, she's asked 3 questions. Okay. Number 1, what are the best ways to build rapport with your network if you live in a small town within a small country for the most part is not active in places like LinkedIn? Okay, they're not on LinkedIn, fine. I don't know if your network is that town. Let's say for sake of argument it is. So Bernadette, if the network you're trying to engage with is the small town you're in, then they're all on Facebook. And so what you do is you promote your content, therefore your message, as adverts, if you like, to that small group. So you do it demographically as content. That is an advert. So you put money against your content specifically to that area. So that set of people, that small town you live in, they will then start seeing your content, consuming it. That will work. Okay. The other thing you can do is, of course, arrange a reason for them to get together with you. A lot of people I've heard in the past, like, they complain there's no networking events, things like that. It's like, so run one, Why didn't you book a hall for 3 hours, get people together, and you're away? It really does work very well. So I think that's a very important idea. With Facebook, there are adverts to everyone. Then there are adverts to a specific demographic and a kind of particular set of people, but also location, for instance, your small town. But then there is content as adverts to that set of people. For me, that works best because it sends the message to them about what I'm doing. It doesn't sell to them. And if my message is interesting enough, it leverages their curiosity, and then they spend time around me. And that's what I would do. That works for me very well. So hopefully I've answered your question in the right way, because I'm trying to understand what your point of view is. Daniel here is asked on Facebook, or added on Facebook. Good question. Had a friend saying the same in a small Midwestern town. Where do you draw the line? Being a kinesthetic learner, where do you draw the line with micromanaging? So it's difficult. And I think an open dialogue with the person you're micromanaging is the right thing to do here, Daniel. So if you have you and someone else, you need to be, it's not just like, I want to try and guess or second guess or work out how to micromanage this person or not. Indeed, it should be, let me speak to you. Here's how I think I will manage you, how I expect to manage you. how does that sit with you? And it's a wise thing to do, because that way we're staying tight with that person who's actually going to be doing it. Okay, so I hope that helps a bit. And I think just going back to Bernadette's point, if your network, by the way, Bernadette, isn't the small town, and you're just saying it because, you know, just saying that you happen to be in a small town, well, then it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So if they're not active on LinkedIn, no problem. So work elsewhere, you know, but you can work through Facebook. But I feel, because the way you've written your question, what you're saying is your network is the small town itself. So Facebook ads to that local group is brilliant. Plus do some local events as well. No reason why you shouldn't. If there are networking events, great. If not, so set one up. I think it's a really good idea. And then you can advertise those, if you like, in those ads. But it's so underdone at the moment. I think it is the way people were going to win more in 2019 is you put your money, when it comes to spending on ads, you put your money against your content. Don't advertise your service. Put your money against your content. Because if your content's good enough or compelling enough, people will then check you out. And that is the funnel approach. That, you know, they go onto your website or onto your profile. From there, it is very simple to breadcrumb them, you know, to purchase something. But I think that seems to be working in a much more authentic way, and people don't feel like they're being gamed as much. It feels very much like the choice is theirs. Of course, you're retargeting them with better content and more content, and maybe those who consume it all over and over again, then you pivot to more of an advert in the classic sense to them. But putting money against your content is a really wise use of your cash, in my opinion. Great. Just want to shout out a few people here. Temi Camson, nice to see you on Instagram. We supported your charity recently. Just want to say thank you to everyone who's involved in Entrepreneur Business Live. Last week, we had the 6th Entrepreneur Business Live, and for the past 4 months, we've been working with charities. Over $1,000 has been raised for local charities and charities involved with young people as a direct consequence of people attending those events. I'm really pleased for that. Those of you joining a bit later on, if you could write in if you're Team Live, so hashtag Team Live or hashtag Team Replay, based on if you're watching now or watching later on. And thanks to Bonsai, to Judy, to Mona. Nice to see you here as well. Before I get on to the next question from Bernadette, I'm going to answer this one from Devon. Do you have any tips for turning your online following into an email list in a simple way, or a best way to make them ask? It's really hard to read questions because you get notifications all the time. Best way to make the ask is at the back end of some great value. So what I did recently, for instance, is on a LinkedIn video, which I knew was going to get loads of traction. At the end, it was my CTA, my call to action. So I had a great bit of value. And at the very end of that video, it had a little card saying, are you on my newsletter or something like that? Go to, well, you know what it is. You helped me produce the link, Devon. So go to therichardmoore.com/newsletter to sign up. You might say, yeah, but not many people are going to look at it. But here's my logic. If someone decides to consume not just some of your content, but all of it to the end, think about how keen that person is. So someone who's keen on your content, who goes to the very end, you validate it with the ask. They've basically said to you, you know, that you've earned the right to ask if they've consumed all the content. If you ask at the front, of course, you're not giving them anything yet. Those that don't get to the end, doesn't matter, because they didn't like the content enough to get to the end. So the true followers, the real ones who really love the content, they're the ones who sign up to the newsletter. That's why every Mona, you're watching live, so you can tune in and you can write here and let me know if I'm right or not. But every week when that newsletter goes out, basically 0 unsubscribes, okay? Because the people who are signing up are only signing up or opting into the newsletter when they've decided that my content's fantastic. So it's not underhand. GDPR saw to that back in May this year, that you weren't gonna gain people into email lists. So yeah, the email list is small, but the email list is strong because it means we've got people who actively want to read that. So that newsletter gets read a huge amount. Like the open rates are way above industry average, and the unsubscribes are basically nil. And it means that if people who are brought in because they've consumed the content and gone, it's almost like if a dog does a trick, you give them a treat, right? If they don't do the whole trick, you don't give them the treat. And so I'm rewarding good behavior. So if someone consumes the value, then I give them a reason to take it further. And they would want that reason to take it further because they consume the value. So the earned right is there. So that's the way I do it. You cannot just ask outright is my answer there, Devin, simply because you've done it that way. So hopefully that helps. Great question. Let's just see down a few more people joining in. So Daniel Nunes has said, yes, just piggybacking Mr. Getty's question, learning to delegate rather than trying to do everything individually. Learning to delegate is really difficult for many. For me, it's really hard because if you're of the mindset that you have to have everything just right, and being someone who wants things just right means you have to fight against that because completion is better than perfection. What is important is trying to get your head around this idea that no one will do it as well as you, which actually means not that no one will really do it as well as you, it's just no one will do it as much the same as you. So when you delegate something, you have to be cool with it not looking quite the same as you, because it's going to have their feel to it. So for instance, if someone was going to sell on my behalf, they wouldn't sell as well as me, is the way I would be thinking it. But the reality is that they wouldn't sell the same as me. And as long as they're doing probably 70%, I would say, 70% as good a job as you, that's probably enough. And that's, you can't expect too much more than that, in my opinion. Okay, so that's where I look at delegation. It's hard because a lot of the time it's not just taking a small step back so that someone can be delegated stuff to free up more time. Sometimes it's a huge amount of work to get people up to speed, but that's worth doing because then there's a lot less needed later on. So it's a question of weighing up how much effort you're willing to put in to get that thing sorted in the long term, which is why delegation on tasks that are going to be repeated a lot over time is a great shout. If you're delegating on one random task, sometimes it's not really worth the hassle. But if it's something that'll be coming up again and again, like my newsletter, for instance, a lot of the effort there is delegated to very capable people, so Mona being one of them. It does mean that you end up in a place where things can get easier across time. Okay. Let's just see what else people are writing. Team Replay, Judy, you're watching right now. Hey, Ian. Hey, Richard, says Ian Tisco. In your experience, have you been the better mobile? What have been the better mobile devices and operating systems? Are you an iOS or Android fan? You can't ask that. But I'll be honest. The better is subjective, Ian. So if you're asking my opinion, don't buy an iPhone. The only Apple device I ever owned was one of those little clip-on iPod shuffle things that would have been 8 years ago, I think, when I ran the marathon. I remember I bought one just so I could run it and wouldn't have it much to carry. So I bought it because it was an MP3 player that didn't weigh much. Did not buy it because I was an Apple fanboy, I'm afraid. I've never owned an Apple phone, so I have no ability to comment on it. However, I've seen the fury that it has invoked in my wife. She's full on Apple. She's got a bunch of tablets and the phones and things like that. And in my opinion, as a PC guy and as an Android user, they are the more intelligent phones, simply because you plug them in, you got your hard drive, rather than mucking about with iTunes, things like that. So I will start a war if I start saying anything else than that. So I would leave it at that. But in my opinion, I'm a fan of Android, and I like what they stand for. I like the collaborative effort across platforms. Hello, Javid, nice to see you. Hello, Jamie, nice to see you here. Mona, thank you for confirming there are no unsubscribes on my newsletter. That's right. Ernest, you're here. Alexandra Galvis is watching. John Sarnecki III is here. Nice to see you as well. And anyway, so let's get on to the announcement, because some of you are asking about the announcement as well. The announcement is 3 people are being invited for free to join the Entrepreneur Business Club. Now, we've got the Entrepreneur Business Group, which is a free group, just ticked over 3,700 members on Facebook. It's been running for a couple of years. It is growing lovely. Well, it's a really organic growth there. And it's purely a great place to share content and things like that, and engage with like-minded people. But the idea of the Entrepreneur Business Club was to lift it up a notch. And the people who are in that club pay a very small amount of money. It's funny because we called it a premium club. They pay $9.97 per month to be in it. So that's 30 cents, I believe it works out, per day to be in it. And that is it's incidental, that amount of money, but it's sufficient to get those that join groups but don't bother engaging out the way. And the whole point of the Entrepreneur Business Club is to flatten it all completely. So there's no kind of admins and posters, although technically I'm an admin because I owned it, but essentially everyone's at the same level. And the whole point, and I hope you're listening to it, those of you who are about to win this, there are 3 of you going to get in. The whole point of Entrepreneur Business Club, and you can find out more information on therichardmoore.com under products. The whole point is if you join it, is fully about collaborating. So you have full posting rights, which means you can post all day, every day if you want to. But what we don't do is just slam it with motivational memes or share just other people's content because that's a kind of an entrepreneurial thing to do. It is more calculated. The whole point is that we want everyone in there to do 2 things. One thing they do is they share ideas of their own for feedback, such as, hey guys, I'm putting out this advert today. What do you think of the copy? Hey, I need, like the question earlier, what's the best invoicing and accounting software for a freelancer? And the whole point of the second point, if you like, is that people also answer back. So it's about collaborating. So you're in there to post and ask questions, and you're also there to answer as well. And it works because the people there understand that their job, if you like, is to try and regularly post ideas and things. Hey, I saw this thing. Is anyone aware of this? Or does anyone know someone who can do that thing? And so many times people have connected and said, that's great, I can do that and I can help you out. So it's a lovely little network. It's deliberately very small. I think there's only like 30 people in it at the moment. It will grow, but the idea is you're either collaborative or you don't stay in. And so recently I had a little cull. We moved on people who had joined it but actually don't do anything. It's important to make sure you're active. So the 3 people who are joining the group, because I said, I put in I think it was on the Entrepreneur Business Group in Facebook, why should you be in the club? And these 3 people who are going to be in, and there's no fee for you 3 to pay, are Paul Barry, Russ Avery, and Kamal Mansour. So all 3 of you, well done. And you all wrote great answers. I'm not going to read them out that now, but they were basically along the lines of, I'm going to collaborate. It's something I want to do. So when you join the club, when I add you in, make sure that you start posting and engaging with other people's content as well. That's the point. If that club goes silent, it's all a waste of time. And that's the point here. So we want it to be a place where people are active. So that's why Entrepreneur Business Club is taking off slowly, but it's important to make sure we grow it in the right way with the right people. Let's go on to a couple more questions. So Bernadette Judd had another question here. Practical steps to heal a shoddy money mindset. Presumably, shoddy money mindset is not working with money in the right way. I don't know. But what I would say is that there's a lot of things I could say about this. One thing that popped into my head when I read that out was the thing that happened to me many years ago. Was that I remember reading a lot of books. I think it was probably 2004. I think it was 2004 when I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, which is massively cheesy, that book. And you can't read it without rolling your eyes, right? Because it's very formulaic and so on. But there's a lot of good stuff in there. And learning really what a liability is and what an asset is and things like that. So it was a long time. It was like 14 years ago when I read that. And the thing that stood out to me was if you don't have much money, you shouldn't try and put energy into tightening your belt, unless you're throwing the money away, being really ridiculous about spending. But you shouldn't focus your time and energy on saving or cutting out costs. You should focus instead on making money. So I remember it really well because it was around then obviously 10 years after that, or ish, a bit before that, I started my own business, and it was very much like, it's tight this month, there isn't much money. So rather than trying to hang in there or cut costs, it's go and make more instead. And I think that's a really practical mindset to have. It was a really good idea just to say, like, if there isn't enough, go get more. And one thing I remember was that it was always difficult when I was in a corporate job when you get to the end of the month, because you maybe wouldn't have as much money, then you get paid again. I wanted to work against that. So I also looked at how I'd pay out for my business on payroll. So I actually have 2 paydays. I've never actually told anyone this. I have 2 paydays in my month. So instead of getting paid at the end of the month on the 28th, I get paid on the 15th and the 28th. Because then instead of getting paid once, I get paid twice. And so so I only have to go 2 weeks, you see. So it feels like there's more already coming in. It's a nice way of working against it as well. That kind of worked out quite well. One thing that they did I think in Rich Dad Poor Dad, actually was instead, and I did this with a business I was working with long term, was I actually had 13 paychecks. It was about 2010 we had this. Instead of being paid monthly, I was paid every 4 weeks. So what it meant was every 4 weeks, kind of every month, you'd get your paycheck. But because it was every 4 weeks, there'd be 1 month of the year that it would work in a certain way that within the calendar month, you'd be paid twice. So basically you'd pay out your mortgage and all that bills, then you'd actually get another wage, it would feel like. So that's how I do it. But my approach now is pay myself twice every month rather than just once. Brandy Holloway, hello, nice to see you here. Where have you been? You know, it's 1:30, you're late. So, but thanks very much for joining as well. But that's what I would do, is look at for practical steps, Bernadette, I would be saying to myself, if I'm tight on cash right now, go get more rather than spend time and money coupon cutting and things like that. To a degree, because what I'm not saying is, you know, don't just be frivolous. And some would say this. I had a manager once that said this. He was like, you should be spending like crazy. Just go crazy. Don't think about saving or being clever or being careful with your money. Focus all in on making more. So that was quite extreme, because he was basically saying no matter how fast you run down your bank account, you should just be trying to add more on top. So that was kind of crazy. But then I was in a sales job. I saw his point of view. But what I would do is, you know, to a degree, don't be absurd with your spending, but certainly focus more. It's called abundance mindset, I suppose. It's focusing much more on making money rather than trying to save it or shore up your position if things are a bit tight. All of us have this ability to go out and find more money, as opposed to just try and hope that you can limp in over the line by the end of the month. So hopefully that helps. Good question, Bernadette. Since you just joined, let's add in Brandy Holloway's question. Thanks so much for joining on Facebook. You've asked, Richard, with social media collaboration and growth, how important are groups? Having one of your own and being a part of others? Well, I have the Entrepreneur Entrepreneur Business Group on Facebook. And as you're probably noticing, there are a lot of perks there. So there's money given away. They have exclusive live streaming, the members there, of the Entrepreneur Business Live events. And of course, any events I'm allowed to stream from. So Geneva 2 weeks ago, when I was there for the LinkedIn Local with Catherine Dar, I streamed that to the group as well. So there's a lot of exclusive stuff. And that's a really good thing to do because it builds value in a particular place. But here's the thing. The point about groups is it is a condensed or concentrated place for a niche. And the group itself is a bunch of entrepreneurs, in the same way as there are groups for anything. And the reason why groups work is because you can go to this place and find people who have signed up at one point or another because they felt at that time, I have an interest in this particular thing. Now, some groups, as we know, are more active than others. So those are the groups you want to try and spend time with. They are brilliant. It's certainly for starting out, because it allows you to find a place where you don't have to fish in the ocean to try and find potential customers or people to connect with who share your values and ideas, because you know it's going to be a very rich pool of people in that one place. So you can, if you're looking for leads, you can mine that scene. Okay, if you're looking for people to collaborate with, they're already there. That's why the groups, other people's groups, can really work well. But like with anything, you need to be able to commit to things. So I'm in very, very, very few groups. I'm very fussy about it. I'm in mine, and I've got my club as well. But also, there's a couple of other groups. But really, I remember recently I just exited a lot of groups because there's always another mindset group, or there's always another cryptocurrency gurus group with 40,000 people and no one ever does anything, and they just pull you in. And so you just got to exit all this stuff because it's not going to do necessarily anything for you. But I do feel that with social media collaboration and growth, yes, of course, that's great. Like I did with Ben Bradbury last week, for instance, that's fantastic. And my group, if you like, on LinkedIn is a community of people. But definitely, I think being active in groups that are relevant to your space is valuable. And here's the reason why. And this is what I used before I started Entrepreneur Business Group, In 2014, at the end of 2014, when I was starting out with my online work and getting clients, so like my first ever online clients, I'd done consulting offline in bricks and mortar businesses, but when I was actually out there online rather, looking for clients, I would go into groups where I knew there'd be an active entrepreneur and startup following. So for instance, even Ty Lopez's 67 Steps group, you could go in and you could actually post in it then. These are the days where you could write something and Ty Lopez would actually answer it. Things have changed for that man since, and in 2015 I kind of left him alone a bit. But in 2014 it was very early days and people were very active in that group. And it was perfect because I could go in a group, I could add value, and people would start seeing you as the person who was really useful. So what was happening was I was going to that other person's group, I was going to Ty Lopez's group, and I was posting content and sharing value, and people were like, oh, this is really good. And those that were active in the group would then see me the next day, then the next day, then the next day. Ty Lopez doesn't mind. The reason why Ty Lopez didn't mind because he's the guy who owns the group. All I'm doing is helping his groups. It's always a good thing. And he doesn't mind about me. I'm sure he didn't mind about me grabbing the old client here and there, in the same way as I don't care that in Entrepreneur Business Group, probably plenty of people are finding it, using it for leads. The reason why is because there's more than enough pie to go around. And that abundance mindset, in fact, that I just talked about with Bernadette's question is exactly what's happening there. Good for you. If you're gonna take some of the people in the group and turn them into clients, no problem. There's enough to go around. And if someone wants to work with that person instead of or rather if someone wants to work with me instead of Ty Lopez, I'm sure he doesn't care because it doesn't matter. If you're missing out on something or losing on something, then you just go find someone else. There's plenty of people out there. So that works really well. And so I think working with groups like that can be good. Going to other people's groups because it's a great place to find those that are like interested in your space that you can position yourself as an expert against. In my Monetize You course in step 5, I talk about this a lot, this idea of being an expert and what it actually means and how to practically leverage that. So hopefully that answers your question somewhat, Brandy. The other part of the question you've added here, in short, what I was saying there is it helps you make a name for yourself in that community, which is rich on paper. It should be rich with people in that particular set of interest areas. The other question, part of the question is also how much time do you devote to other groups? Sorry, you've already asked that. So where was it? LinkedIn and Facebook. Well, someone asked me about LinkedIn groups. Sorry, it wasn't you. It was Bernadette. Is anyone doing LinkedIn groups with success yet? Well, in 2012, I worked in a LinkedIn group with someone, and we did really well. It was helping a headhunting company. They set up a LinkedIn group for directors and decision makers in healthcare, specifically in medical device and biotech businesses. And what we did was we added in people to the group who potentially would be clients. We didn't add in people who would take them as clients. So it's a very, very rich pool of people. We maybe would have several hundred people in there. And what we did every day was stimulate conversation, which is very, very practical, which is what I do maybe with my content, things like that. Stimulate conversation by asking questions and posting statements and getting people, like tagging a couple of people and say, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? This was years back. This is like 6 years ago, but we did this really effectively because it meant the group wasn't just a group of people technically in a pen, if you like. What they were doing was they were actively coming forward with their ideas. You could see collaborations happening everywhere, but also, since that company was headhunters, it allowed them to then fish in that very, very rich pond. So that was a really good idea. Since then, I'm not really part of many LinkedIn groups. Something I think I may do in the future, but right now I'm not building one. But yeah, I can't see why it would be a bad thing to do. It's just another thing you need to make sure you commit to, or have admins and VAs that are trustworthy adding the same. So good question there, Bernadette. Daniel Nunes, you asked a question about sneezes. Let's get that one in. Would you go in more depth about how to identify and leverage the sneezers? The sneezers is a Seth Godin term. I can't remember what book it's from. I think it's from Tribes. But the idea of the sneezer, hello Lila, nice to see you. Hello Route 1 Million, hello ALFNSJ. Guys, the name's on Instagram. Nice to see you. The idea of the sneeze is someone who will pass on your information. Okay, as in they will get your content and say, I think it's great, and they'll share it. They sneeze, they share it around. And if you read one book on this, it should be Jonah Berger's Contagious. Wonderful name to talk about sneezers, as well as Seth Godin, of course. What Jonah Berger's saying in his book is that there are a number of things you need to do or have to make sure your content kind of can go viral or be spread and so on. And the one thing he talks about is a gross term, Lila, you're absolutely right. One thing he talks about is the idea of creating social currency. So think about it this way. You do reverse engineering down here. You map back from people sharing your content. What really happens up here when someone shares content is really simple. People share stuff if it creates an emotional reaction amongst their audience, amongst their friends. And you only share something if it's going to bring you some element of cachet. Either it helps people, so that's a nice thing to do, or it's funny, so it makes you by association funny, or it's emotional and sad, or heartstrings are pulled, for instance, and that's a reflection of something you're sharing. If you share something that's just stupid, it doesn't make sense, then it by association is going back to you. It doesn't really make sense. And people in your group that you're broadcasting to are going to say, what's wrong with this guy? Why did they share that? Okay. So instead, people share things that essentially will augment their physical or rather their online presence. If that's the case, then you need to create what's called shareability. So what you need to do is share or create content that people are going to want to share, which is why cats and puppies get huge shareability. If you want just shareability in the pure sense, because people like cute works, okay? People like motivational memes because it just, it brings out the emotion in a lot of people. As far as practicality goes, it doesn't arguably, it's not so great, that kind of thing. But I think looking at identifying and leveraging sneezers, the way I'd look at it is always look at two things. They should be active. They should also have a following. In my opinion, those are people who potentially could be sneezers. If someone is active, as in they have the habit of posting and perhaps sharing content, that's a great start point because that's what you're going to need. And the other thing is you need someone who has followers, because if they're active and they share stuff but there aren't any followers, well, that's kind of pointless. Okay, so what you need is for them to have a captive audience of people who are interested in what they have to say. They're the people to work with. There's a whole spectrum of sneezers in terms of size of audience, and to get Kim Kardashian to share your post because that will help you go viral. Great. But then you have to do what you need to do to court Kim Kardashian to get her to actually share your post. So that's a tough ask. So perhaps someone a little further back down the spectrum, someone who maybe is several notches above you, but not so out of reach that you can't engage with that person. That's not gonna, not gonna be so unattainable. But you've asked, how do you leverage it? How do you do this? Once you've identified them, it's really simple. You spend a mad amount of time helping them. You actually help them. Don't just write, I think you're amazing. Share stuff. Write on their posts, I like this. John tag. This is something that would be relevant for you, wouldn't it? James, didn't you talk about this recently actually? So this happened recently actually on a post, I think, of mine. And because I think Lila Smith's still listening on Instagram, I think I shouted you out because I'd shouted Jake Melton out, I think, who'd worked with you on something, who in turn had worked with someone else. And I just think being part of the conversation, showing up every day like that is the game. Because what it does is it validates you as someone who actually is there to do something meaningful. And if you're interesting, bring enough value and are meaningful, then those sneezers will eventually feel, do you know what? I quite like this person and I like their stuff enough, I'll now share it. And that's how it works. And yes, it takes a long time. And yes, you have to put more effort in than just hoping people will do it straight off the bat. But if you want something, you have to put it in. It's simple as that, really. So that's my approach. That's how it works. Like, you've written a load of comments there, but let's see what you've written. People want to be seen as the one who discovered great value. Exactly right. Exactly. If you're the one who found this cool video, it makes you look really good. That term is social currency. That's what it's called in Contagious by Jonah Berger. And the idea of social currency is it elevates you amongst your social group because you've got this thing that people are going to be drawn to. It's a status thing, and that's how it works. And people want to share that because it makes them look good. So that's what you need to create for people. That's why you should be putting effort into the content you create. And if you share other people's stuff and not your own content ever, then all you're doing is you're helping those other people. Like those, for instance, there was a guy on Instagram actually recently who was asking, I think I mentioned this last week, he was asking me why he wasn't getting any clients through Instagram for his coaching business. So I looked at his Instagram post and every single one was a Gary Vaynerchuk meme. I said, all you're doing is promoting Gary Vaynerchuk. And it may be that the ethos or values of Gary Vaynerchuk is what you stand for, but no one knows that. There's not even here's Gary Vaynerchuk saying this, but here's why I believe it. But here's my opinion of it. Do you see what I mean? So share other people's opinions, sure, but add your 2 cents, because aren't people showing up on your account for your stuff? Otherwise, they can always go to Gary Vaynerchuk's, right? So it's important, I think, to bring your own vibe as well. Right, so there's a couple of points in here on Facebook. I'm planning to travel, as Brandy Hollow, I'm planning to travel regionally and collaborate with others on events for Socialpreneur Summit. So I thought about using a LinkedIn group to qualify and gain participants in those areas. That could work, Brandy, but I think just remember, a group's going to make it a little bit more closed. So it could be just something you talk about generally in your community or in your group. I suppose in your group, but more in your community, because then it grabs other people in. But then you could have a kind of a holding group for them afterwards. Once you've established those people are going to probably be ones who speak at your event. So that might work. Let's go on a couple more questions. What time is it? We've been going about 45 minutes. That's fine. So Mona Nairi, shout out to you, Mona. Hello. And by the way, if everyone is anyone who's watching right now, let me know whereabouts you are based. I just want to kind of collect this, because also it's interesting. Whenever I do this, there's usually someone who said, "Oh, I didn't realize you're nearby," and people get together a bit more. So do post whereabouts you're based. Yes. So where was I up to? Mona Nairi, how do you run a successful mobilization campaign from social? Like get people to do something and post about it. Actually, this is very similar, Mona, to Daniel's question. You need to map back from from content as social currency. If you want people to take action against content, you need to give them a reason to do it. And so you have to look at, it's not about call to action only, it's about the content itself often. It's why would someone want to engage in this content and do something? It might be because you pull on a particular heartstrings where it gets particularly emotional for them. It compels them to do something. But it might be you as well. And I suggest a combination of the two. So what I'm saying here is, for instance, it should be that you are a compelling enough reason for someone to want to engage in your content and take some action. Simultaneously, it should be that it's someone else. Some content in there that is compelling for them too. So it's a combination of you being compelling and the content there being interesting enough as well. Because if there's no community based on you engaging with people and being a great person away from that content, well, then you better hope the content is so world class that it does it on its own. And again, I bang on about this all the time, and those who do content creation effectively will agree with me. It makes sense to spend most of your time in the community engaging one-on-one with people. So this morning, for about 45 minutes, I was solidly DMing all of the people last night who followed me on Instagram. That's all I was doing. Thanks so much. And what I was also doing, this is my tip right now for the first DMs you're sending people, is write stuff that doesn't suggest you're a bot. Because bots are really clever at writing things that don't look like spam, but look like a "hey, how's it going" kind of thing. I want them to know it definitely was a real person writing that comment. So I would write something specific about their profile. Like that kind of time in the community doing that kind of thing is really what mattered. It really does. Let's do a couple more questions here. One here from Judy Fox. Thanks for watching, Judy. Share some examples of entrepreneurs like you and Ben from your recent LinkedIn video discussion who are creating a clear, pure signal with their content on or profile or website, and or share more behind the scenes of creating your clear signal process. Okay, so with creating clear signal, it starts with the end first. You need to think to yourself, what is it people should be paying me for? What is it that people should be my clients for? What should people be thinking, I'm going to use Richard for that? So once you know what it is you do, as in the solution to the problem that you're providing, once you know that, and I'm leveraging the point that Ben made in his video on Friday, is once you know that, that creates a very simple thing in your head for, am I making the right content? So for instance, I know when I have it back of mind all the time, I provide fantastic sales training for corporates, like really good, because the feedback's really good and it gets people sales. And then they say to me, I just made this much more money this month on that deal because of that thing you did. So I need people to be aware that I do that thing. If that's the case, that I want people who are going to be aware that I do that and buy from me, then I need to give value against that skill set that I'm offering. It's as simple as that. That's all there is to it. In the same ways with that chap I mentioned on Instagram the other day, if he's going to, if he wants people to say to him, hi, could you provide me with life coaching, please? He needs to give out content and a pure signal of non-stop content showing his ability as a life coach. That's him speaking. That's his testimonials. That's people saying this guy's a great life coach. Or of course, it's sharing how to help yourself, through the things that a good life coach would say you do, so value or tips or whatever and things like that. So giving out value is a really great content play, but you should only do that because that maps from the outcome or the end point of, I need people to be buying my services like this. Okay, so that's as simple as that. It doesn't have to be more complex. It's where do I want people to ultimately be thinking about me, and where do I want their action to be, and therefore I'm intentional and purposeful about my content as long as it's focused on getting in that direction. Anything else tends to not matter quite as much. That's how you do it, and that keeps you on point. A couple of examples. I can think of a few. So Toph Evans, T-O-F-E Evans, a guy down under who I engaged with recently. He is a great example of someone who talks about resilience as a mindset. He's done a lot of kind of ultra marathons and extreme challenges, and that's the thing he focuses on. His book is about that as well, and he talks a lot along those lines. So, that pure signal is there with him. Someone like Bridget Hyacinth, who I was just thinking about, is a mutual contact. You've met her before, of course, Judy. She is voted one of the top 100 voices in HR. I think one of the leading people in that space in the Caribbean as well. And her book and all her content is about HR and leadership. And that's a pure signal being sent out because it's all about positioning. She's positioning herself as someone who's strong in that place. In that space. Dot Lung over on Facebook, who asked the question at the top of this session. She's a perfect example who is a very, very intentional about her content. It's very creative, design driven, because that's what she does. She focuses on creative digital design. So her Instagram, even her stories, are these amazingly well produced animations and very creative because it shows what she does. That it's like, it doesn't take you long to realize that's her focus point. And I think it could go on all night, but these are a few examples for you of people who are clear on what they do, because you don't want to confuse your audience. It's so easy to chat lots, okay? But if you don't do it against a particular vibe or thing, what happens is that people know you as the person who's nice to come and watch, but they don't actually realize what it is you do or sell. So that needs to be clear as day. The other thing, of course, is make sure that your profile and website and so on are set up right. Because if people are curious, and by the way, just a tip, they are, when they check out your content, they will want to hop over and see that, your website or your profile and see what you're all about. So you've got to make sure that's of value to them as well. I'm just going to finish there. Thank you very much. It's a really great session today. It was great to do an AMA. Next week, on Monday, I'm just looking at the dates. So next week on Monday will be Christmas Eve. So I'm looking forward to that one. And thank you everyone who watched and stayed with me all day. Well done to Russ Paul and Kumal, who are now in the Entrepreneur Business Club. Congratulations to Matt Baisley, I think his name was, who got $50 for the Answer in the Entrepreneur Business group. Needless to say, you should be in the Facebook group, but also look out for the next newsletter today. I think it's like the 12th or 13th one we've done now. That's going out about 4 or 5 hours from now. So if you go to therichardmoore.com/newsletter, you can sign up for that. In the meantime, thank you everyone for watching. Thanks everyone on YouTube.